I was wondering whether drinking alcohol is really that bad for someone living with diabetes, or whether having a drink or two at a party is actually okay. So over the past couple months, I tried the most popular alcoholic drinks, and after each of them I tested my blood sugar to see if it spiked too high or dropped too low. And what I discovered was the most important lesson about alcohol and diabetes that you will ever come across. So in this video I'm going to show you if it's okay to drink alcohol if you're someone living with diabetes, how you can drink alcohol safely without doing too much damage to your body, and what's the best drink that will keep your blood sugar under control. And by the way, I'm also going to share with you a story about a night when alcohol almost killed me. Please keep in mind I'm not a doctor. I'm just sharing my experience as someone who's lived with diabetes for over 35 years. The first alcoholic drink I decided to test was beer. The reason why I chose beer was simple. I come from the Czech Republic, and Czechs are known to drink the most beer per capita in the world. But is it okay to drink beer for a diabetic? Well, the most iconic Czech lager beer doesn't have that much alcohol, only 4.4% by volume. But a small glass of this lager also has about 145 calories and 17 carbs, which is quite a lot. When I tested my blood sugar after drinking this beer, I saw the glucose spiking to around 200 within 45 minutes of drinking it, a lot higher than what I would like to see. And that's why I don't think beer is the best option for people living with diabetes. But the interesting thing is that the reason why most beers spike blood sugar very fast is not the alcohol, it's the high carb content of the beer. So if you can't live without it, try looking for a more blood sugar friendly beer with less carbs. Corona Premier, Budweiser Select or Miller Lite might be good options. Look what my blood sugar did after I drank Corona Premier. The spike is very mild, a lot less compared to a traditional beer. Unfortunately, with all these light beers, you need to compromise on taste a little bit. But at the end of the day, it's up to you to decide what's more important, whether it's the taste of the beer or your blood sugar levels. Now, don't get me wrong, I do drink a normal beer from time to time too. Whenever I do that, I usually give myself a little bit of insulin before I start drinking that beer to cover those carbs in the beer and to avoid that blood sugar spike. And this approach works really well for me. But another thing you need to keep in mind is that it's not only about the carbs. The alcohol in the beer impacts our blood sugar too. And I'm going to show you how a bit later in this video. Next, I want to talk about the second alcoholic drink I decided to test during my experiment: wine. Now, wine is a popular choice amongst many of my friends who live with diabetes, because unlike beer, wine tends to have a lower carbohydrate content. But wine also has higher alcohol content by volume. So is it really better than beer? Let's break it out. An average wine you can buy in most stores and restaurants has somewhere between 11 and 14% of alcohol. But the range can get much wider with some fortified wines, reaching the alcohol content of up to 20%. Now, a typical glass of dry wine will have somewhere between 1 and 2 grams of carbs, which is very low, almost negligible, and about 100 to 130 calories. When I tested both white and red dry wine, my blood sugar after drinking a glass didn't spike at all. Even after a second glass, the blood sugar was still flat for the next couple hours. That's why I think that dry wine is really blood sugar friendly, and it seems to be a good option for people living with diabetes. But we have to keep in mind that not all wines are created equal. A glass of sweet wine like dessert wine or sweet sparkling wine can easily have around 15 carbs and 160 calories. That's about as much as a small beer. Here you can clearly see the difference between a glass of dry red wine and a glass of sweet sparkling wine. My blood sugar spiked close to 200 after drinking the sweet wine, and that's not what I like to see. So always make sure that you know what kind of wine you're drinking. I try to stick to dry wines and not drink too much of it. But how much is too much, you might be asking? Okay, let's talk about the elephant in the room. I'm sure that when you saw the title of this video, the best alcohol for diabetes, some of you were thinking, well, that's clear. The best alcohol for diabetes is no alcohol. So, is it actually okay to drink alcohol? Well, according to the American Diabetes Association, drinking a moderate amount of alcohol regularly may have a positive impact on cardiovascular health and lower your HbA1c. They approve of 1 drink per day for women and 2 drinks per day for men. So they seem to allow diabetics to drink daily. But is that the right thing to do? Well, I'm not so sure. See, back in 2005, I was a young man living with type 1 diabetes. I was using an insulin pump and I was supposed to prick my finger and check my blood sugar about 10 times per day. But let me be honest with you, what I really wanted to do back then was explore the world, run after girls, and go out and have drinks. And it didn't take very long and I found my 21-year-old self at a party drinking beers and shots of whiskey one after another. I probably drank like 5 beers and 5 shots of whiskey that night, and I was having fun. But the next thing I remember is an ambulance taking me to hospital. I caused myself an alcohol-induced ketoacidosis and I spent 36 hours in an ICU. And to be honest with you, I feel ashamed to this day when I think of that night. I can hardly imagine the amount of anxiety and embarrassment that my parents must have been through. Now, what I'm trying to say with this story is we need to realize that alcohol plays an important social role in our society. It's really hard to completely avoid it and not make any mistakes. If you're not drinking any alcohol and it works for you, it's perfectly okay. I didn't make this video to encourage you to start drinking. But if you do drink alcohol, try to keep it in moderation. Don't go too crazy, because I don't want you to have to go through what I had to go through on that night when I ended up in hospital. Now let's talk a bit more about the drink that played a major role in my previous story, whiskey. Or you know what, let's talk about spirits in general, because when you live with diabetes, it doesn't really matter if you drink whiskey, bourbon, vodka, gin, or even tequila. During my experiment, I tried them all, and I can confirm that they have very similar effects on both my blood sugar and the way I feel after drinking them. Spirits typically have around 40% alcohol by volume and slightly over 100 calories per shot. So they're not really that helpful when you're trying to lose weight, but at the same time, they have 0 carbohydrates. You heard me right, 0 carbs. I tested them all and my blood sugar stayed pretty much flat after drinking them, as long as I didn't mix them with other things. So they might not be healthy, but they are blood sugar friendly. But most people like to include spirits in cocktails and mixed drinks, and that's why I decided to test a few of those to see what they will do to my blood sugar. The most popular cocktail in the world is margarita. This drink is made of tequila, lime juice and triple sec, which is a sweet orange flavored liqueur. An average margarita has about 250 calories and 15 grams of carbs, and that's probably why my blood sugar spiked quickly to around 180 milligrams per deciliter within about 30 minutes of drinking it. So margarita is not the best drink for someone trying to avoid high blood sugars. Another super popular cocktail I tried was mojito. This one is made of white rum, lime, mint leaves, club soda and sugar syrup. An average mojito has about 220 calories and 13 carbs, coming mostly from the sugar syrup. So it's no surprise that my blood sugar after drinking it spiked about as fast as after drinking margarita. So mojito is also not a good option for someone trying to avoid those steep blood sugar spikes. Now the third popular cocktail I tried was Cosmopolitan. This one is made of vodka, cranberry juice and Cointreau, which again is another sweet orange flavored liqueur. But the thing is, an average Cosmo is a lot more sour than margarita or mojito. It has only 7 carbs, which is not too bad. When I looked at my CGM after drinking Cosmo, I could see that my blood sugar spiked, but not anywhere as much as with traditional mojito or margarita. So Cosmopolitan might be something to consider if you're in the market for a classic blood sugar friendly cocktail. But when it comes to mixed drinks, I have to admit that my real guilty pleasure is Aperol Spritz. This drink is made of Aperol liqueur, Prosecco and soda water. With 200 calories and 18 carbs per average glass of Aperol, it's a quite calorie and carb heavy drink. And that's why it's no surprise that my blood sugar spiked quickly to over 200 within about 30 minutes of drinking it. Definitely not a blood sugar friendly option. I will still drink it from time to time though, but when I do, I usually give myself a little insulin to cover those carbs in Aperol Spritz before I start drinking it, to avoid that steep blood sugar spike. Now it's becoming clearer and clearer from this experiment that it's not the alcohol that raises blood glucose. It's the carbs, the sugar syrups and the sweet liqueurs in some of these mixed drinks that make my blood sugar shoot up and make things a lot more challenging for me. But don't worry, I'm gonna share a few more blood sugar friendly cocktails as well as my absolute favorite drink that doesn't spike my blood sugar a bit later in this video. Now before I do that, I need to share another story with you. You see, on that night when I ended up in hospital, I clearly drank way too much beer, and that's why my blood sugar spiked to over 400. I also drank way too much whiskey and alcohol in general, which led to vomiting, dehydration, and caused diabetic ketoacidosis, or DKA. Since that happened to me, I really tried to drink alcohol in moderation and not overdo it, because DKA is a major risk factor. But there is another big concern I have with alcoholic drinks, and another risk which is even more common when you are a diabetic. Remember the chart I was showing you of what my blood sugar does after drinking beer, wine, or whiskey? Well, I only showed you the first part of it, but I didn't tell you the whole story. The thing is, when we're drinking alcoholic beverages, the initial blood sugar spike caused by the carbohydrates in the drink is not the only thing we need to worry about. There is one more thing that happens to our blood sugar several hours after we drink that alcohol. A few years after my first alcohol incident, I already knew I should not drink too much, but I still enjoyed having a few drinks now and then. And one night I wanted to go play soccer with friends. I didn't have enough time to eat dinner, but I was already late, so I didn't think too much of it, and I just left for the soccer game. Everything went well, and after the game we went for a few drinks. And I didn't want to drink beer because I knew it would spike my blood sugar, so I just had 2 or 3 whiskeys on the rocks. At this point it was all good, and by the time I got home I was super tired and I went straight to bed. But the next thing I remember was waking up in the middle of the night all confused. I couldn't quite figure out where I was. My blood sugar must have been super low because I was feeling extremely sick and extremely weak. But I didn't have enough energy in me to make myself get up and eat or drink something sweet to bring my blood sugar up. I just couldn't move. I was basically paralyzed, lying on my bed, feeling sick and not being able to move or think clearly. The only thing I managed to do using literally all the energy I had in me was wake up my girlfriend at the time, who was sleeping next to me. I managed to say only a few words to her, but I remembered these words until today. I'm sick. Help me. I'm sick. I was repeating that over and over again. She managed to bring me a couple of juice boxes, and luckily this helped me recover. But my blood sugar during that night was as low as 38 milligrams per deciliter, which is extremely low and very dangerous. She literally saved my life by bringing me those juice boxes that I could drink. Now, the reason why I'm sharing this story is that what caused that severe low blood sugar event most likely was the alcohol that I drank the night before. And to confirm this theory, I ran an experiment. I compared my blood sugar during nights when I didn't drink any alcohol and during nights after drinking. Here you can see how my average blood sugar graph looked on those nights without alcohol. And here you can see how it looks on those nights with alcohol. We can clearly tell that alcohol starts bringing my blood sugar down in the middle of the night, and the drop continues into early morning. The thing is, there is one organ in our body that is programmed to protect us from these kinds of low blood sugar events. It's liver. Whenever our blood sugar starts dropping too low, the liver starts releasing glucose to bring the blood sugar back to a safe zone. But when the liver is too busy with breaking down alcohol, it doesn't have enough capacity to produce glucose and bring blood sugar up. And that's why my blood sugar not only didn't spike that night, it did the exact opposite. It dropped really low. It was a combination of the alcohol, the physical activity, and the fact that I didn't eat any dinner that made that night really scary. And what I learned from this is that whenever I drink alcohol, I need to make sure I don't skip meals. I also need to reduce my basal insulin dose during the night after drinking to avoid those scary blood sugar drops. But I promised you that I would share my top 3 blood sugar friendly drinks with you. So here they are. Starting with number 3. You can have this one in almost every bar. It's really refreshing and has practically 0 carbs. It's sugar-free mojito. Just ask the waiter or waitress to not add any sugar or any sugar syrup. They'll know what you mean. Now, some of you might like the no sugar version of mojito, but the problem many of you might have is that the drink will now be too sour. Luckily, there is an easy way to fix it. Just ask for a sweetener. Almost every restaurant or a bar has one. So add the sweetener in your mojito. And you can really do this with any cocktail that uses sugary syrup, so it also works for drinks like old-fashioned, Long Island iced tea, or Mai Tai. By the way, here you can see what my blood sugar did after a glass of sugar-free mojito. Literally no blood sugar spike, the line is practically flat. Now, of course, sweeteners are not the healthiest thing ever, especially not the generic ones they have in most bars, but you can always bring your own. My favorite is probably stevia, which offers a reasonable balance between an acceptable taste, sweetness, and healthiness, if that's even a word. Now, moving on to my favorite drink number 2. If you watch some of my previous videos, you might know that I really like Scotch whiskey. Now, most whiskey drinkers will tell you that you should drink whiskey neat, but to be honest, I also find it quite nice to pour the whiskey over several ice cubes and to mix it with some club soda to create a blood sugar friendly cocktail. This simple drink has no added sugar, no carbs, and only about 105 calories. Look at the graph. Whiskey and soda doesn't spike my blood sugar at all. The only thing I need to worry about is a potential drop in my blood glucose a few hours later. But if you don't like whiskey, you could try to do the same thing with a spirit of your choice. Just mix it with ice cubes and soda and see if you like it. Now, before I reveal my number 1 drink, I need to touch on something super important when it comes to diabetes and alcohol. The goal I have with this YouTube channel is for everyone who is watching to live a full life with diabetes while achieving balanced blood sugar and lower HbA1c. But I'm not here to tell you whether or not you should drink alcohol. That's really up to you to decide. I'm just here to share my experience and provide you with some practical strategies so that you can make an occasional drink or two part of your life if you want to, and so that you can make it safely and don't make the same mistakes I made. By the way, I'm currently developing a dedicated group coaching program, the Blood Sugar Academy. And I'm really excited because this program will be here to help you manage your blood sugar at challenging real-life situations, like having a drink or two at a party might be. My goal is to launch the Blood Sugar Academy later this year for the first 10 to 20 people. So if you want to be part of the first group, just click the link below and register your interest. And I will be sure to share more information with you once the program is launched. But here is my number 1 alcoholic drink that I drink most often. Again, you can get this one at every bar and make it in so many variations. As you know, I've been known for my Diet Coke addiction, and that's why my favorite alcoholic drink can be no other than whiskey and Coke. I know it's not the healthiest thing in the world, but I just think it tastes great and it doesn't mess with my blood sugar. As long as I don't drink too many of them, I will be fine. Look at my blood sugar graph after drinking whiskey with Diet Coke. It's perfectly flat line. If you don't like whiskey, you can replace it with any other spirit, and if you don't want to drink Diet Coke, you can replace it with any other diet soda. Now, if you live with diabetes, then you know that the one thing that's even more challenging than alcohol when it comes to blood sugar control is fruit. Many people will tell you that you should not eat any fruit if you're diabetic, but I don't agree with that statement. And I did a similar video to this one, so go ahead, click here and watch that video about the best fruit for diabetes next. I will see you there. Ciao.